Ebusia for any for any kwan so me obi bia akwa ba high daily update TV. Ebusia mpacho breaking news. The President of the Republic of Ghana, John Dramani Mahama, was sacked bosompem Osafo Marfo every SSNIT. Ye kai bosompem Osafo Marfo. Wa on kind me pacho yen place a little bit emphasis and as a consideration on that's the Japade document. Ye kai the Japade document in a me who say Nanado a place bosompem that is Osafo Marfo ba bosompem Osafo Marfo say SSNIT honum on kwashe ho na omuntiminya control over the financial sector, that is the SSNIT, any Eco Bank. Me patcho ye kai exactly what happened. Now me patcho the President of the Republic of Ghana, John Dramani Mahama, inaugurating Ghanaians were much agitated, starting to on Pamini Pewi because ye kai say the President, the current President John Dramani Mahama, Brana na oye so far from menkan se Brana na or contested to become a president again. I Japade document pay by or pay by one thing because say na Japade document grand fine a fallacy nya dia so far I say any said the president now or react to someone nanado bekai our say nanado will say someone of we can a fallacy the Caribbean in dia but in the implementation in actually say as some that is a Japade document and no correct ain't he say president what my pia babontin former president then what my pia babontin at me I be making such reaction. Yeah, we expect and Kawunya at least Ghanaian said to Abanema why inaugurate was were in Niwi and cause our Pami, but some people was half a month with free Hokabet. Anyway, he was doing things at the own right time. You know, me patcho breaking news about so Osafo for Babu some Pem or Safo for your permanent every SSNIT. President Mahama up permanent every SSNIT. I again in some last minute contracts and as employment recruitments are. Nanado, former president, His Excellency, Nino, Mahama, President Mahama, as I was so far, we terminated our contract. Ebusia or terminated our contract through the chief of staff, Julius Debra, Anna, so far, or they sa enable in our eba. In Tebusia, remember Mikasa yet in the termination of, and I said the sacking of Bosompem was half a month and then I that screen is on the bet. The public sector termination, public sector recruitment, that is from 7 December till say your current president, or your best win in or terminating, and also no credit to TV3 Ghana, I'm going to make a broader reportage.
Back to history
of the presidency in relation to appointment and letters handed out to public servants into various government institutions after December 7. There's a directive that's coming from the Chief of Staff right now directing all heads of state institutions to immediately begin processes in annulling all of these appointments that were handed out. Let's try and walk you through exactly what it is that's been coming from the Chief of Staff's office this afternoon. And it reads that consistent with government pronouncement in relation to near end of tenure appointment and recruitment, I wish to bring to your attention that all appointments and recruitments made in the public service of Ghana after the 7th of December 2024 are not in compliance with established good governance practices and principles. That's according to Julius Debra. He's the Chief of Staff. There's a bit more in relation to this has been directed at all heads of government institutions. And it reads that accordingly, all heads of government institutions are hereby requested to take the necessary steps to annul any such appointment or recruitment and submit a comprehensive report on the actions taken to the office of the President by the 17th of February 2025. And he ends by saying that their cooperation in this matter will be highly appreciated. And the 17th will be next week, Monday, is where the Chief of Staff is expected that this comprehensive report will be submitted to the office of the President. It's dated the 10th of January 2025, 10th of February, I should say, 2025, and addressed to all heads of government institutions. And that's the very latest coming from the Chief of Staff, Julius Debra. Alfred Okanse is my colleague here at Media General TV3 on the political desk. The latest that we're getting from the office of the president, and it's consistent, Alfred, with the conversations which has characterized the leader to the swearing in, and even during the transition process, we know that this was one of the many things that came up for conversation, and the current government was consistent in stating that they will annul all such appointments.
And rightly so. And as you indicated, this particular conversation started right from when President John Dramani Mahama was declared as president-elect by General Addo and the EC chair. Now, you recall that the moment the transition team started, the joint transition team started meeting, I recall that the second transition team meeting, there was some sort of agreement between the outgoing transition team and the incoming president's transition team. There was a meeting on the 13th of December last year where that agreement was reached that any such recruitments and even payments of contracts, backdating of some contracts and some payments as well, was going to be cleared with the joint transition team. That
became a point of disagreement of some sort, because we know that the Mahama transition team had issued a statement suggesting same, and then the outgoing government's transition team as well issued a subsequent statement that no such decision had been reached to put on hold such payments.
Absolutely. But then again, you would reference that particular 13 December conversation or that particular decision that was taken, which the outgoing Nana Addo Akufo-Addo transition team indicated that there hadn't been any such agreement. Today, with what we are seeing right now, they make reference to pursuant to certain statements they had made previously. That tells you that they still recognize that there was that agreement that whatever employment or recruitment that was going to be done between 13th of December and now should have been cleared as of the time with the joint transition team. And from what we understand, based on this release, it gives a particular time frame, a period that these recruitments were done. And this is not the first time we are seeing this. In fact, in 2016, and in the early part of 2017, when the then John Dramani Mahama administration handed over to the president-elect Nana Addo Akufo-Addo, this matter came up again, where we saw some recruitment that had been done in the last minute after the 7th of December 2016 election also being reviewed. A number of those recruitments also being reversed or revoked. We're going back to history and seeing things play out in the same manner. But then again, since that communication of the 13th of December, this administration, I'm talking about the John Dramani Mahama-led administration, has been very consistent with their position that all the recruitments done, they call it the last-minute recruitments, done after 13th December, were going to be subject to some sort of a review and then also decisions taken on them. And because it was done in bad faith. If you look at the communication that was issued by the then incoming administration's transition team, signed by Phyllis Kwatio-Fosu, the minister in charge of government communications, indicated that they had observed that despite that particular agreement, which the Nana Addo, that's outgoing transition team said they were not aware, they had indicated that there was that agreement, and based on that agreement, there had to be some sort of engagement before possible recruitment. Right. They say that had not been done, that had been breached, and so all the recruitments that were done from 13th December until the handing over period was done in bad faith. Right. Now, if you look at how that was qualified, it's not surprising that we're seeing this release from the Chief of Staff. And if you recall, in the first week of President John Mahama assuming office as President of the Republic of Ghana, Julius Debra, the Chief of Staff, issued a directive again detailing a recall and a list of the various persons who have been employed.
I'll hold you there. Let's try and subject what we're seeing right now to Labour, not Labour correspondent, Labour expert Austin Gomez, somebody who's done a lot of conversations in relation to Labour, try and get a sense of what it is that we're seeing. Is this grounded in law? Can a person be relieved of an appointment he received from a state institution just by a directive from the Chief of Staff and no law being quoted. Mr. Game, I appreciate that you could speak to us. I'm sure you've been able to catch a glimpse of this particular directive to the heads of the various state institutions. We know the position of the Mahama administration already, but what we're seeing right now, this approach in terminating these contracts, would you say it's the right approach? Mr. Game, can you hear us? Right, it appears we lost Austin Game. But Alfred, back to the wording of what it is that we've seen. Well, I get the indication that Austin Game has joined us via the telephone lines. Mr. Game, I was asking whether or not the approach being adopted by the Mahama administration in deciding to revoke these appointments and recruitments is in the right direction and falls in favor of the law.
Thank you, my brother. To be honest with you, I think that as a principle, it's normal that we go by the rules of managing the human resource according to, the manpower ceiling that we have in various organizations. From what I know in the public and civil service, there's always a manpower ceiling. And you cannot, under any circumstances, not apply properly to the system to enable you to have authority to recruit. So recruitment is not just done because you are a president or because you are just a leader in any organization. It has to go through a process. Now, in this case, like in many other civilized institutions across the world, when you have election, you don't recruit immediately after the election the outgoing government, except that government is taking power from itself, like MPP taking over from MPP. Then recruitment in any form or shape, even that, it does not make economic sense. That's why you have manpower ceiling. You don't go over the manpower ceiling. If you do that, you create financial, imbalance in the system. Now, under the present circumstance, all the people who were recruited immediately after the election, what it means is that you are recruiting people who are supposed to be your favorite for the person who is coming to take office to work with them when he does not know anything about all that. It's not normally done in all countries. Like in America, when you are going, you go with all the people you came with.
Right.
And the new person recruits a new person. But if you want me to talk about specific steps to be taken from an HR point of view.
Right, Mr. Gabe, I'll come to the specifics in terms of steps to be taken in dealing with this going forward. But you raise an important point as to the recruitment process into the public service or civil service. For starters, there's no determination based on what we're seeing whether or not these recruitments, which the direction is that they should be revoked, have gone through the right process or not. There's not been a specific determination. That's one. There's an argument that can be made as well for possible recruitment processes which may have started well before the 7th of December and finalized after the elections. If determination has not been made with some of these matters, wouldn't this directive be against persons who've gone through a legitimate process?
Let's assume positively that the recruitment process began even before the election and thereafter. The appropriate thing to do would have been to let the transition team know that we began a process like this and that the people haven't been shortlisted and interviewed by a panel. These are the marking schemes and so forth and so on. we intend giving them appointment letter.
Right.
So we want the blessings of the transitional team. That is the wise approach, even in governance, in good governance.
Right.
That's how it's supposed to be. Unfortunately, it does appear this was not brought to the attention of the transitional team, except that it was sprung on them as a surprise. Maybe that's the reason why there is this approach that is being given to it.
Well, we know that back in December, it's a conversation my colleague Alfred and I have been having in the studio, that there was that back and forth about recruitment and appointment where the Mahama administration had stated quite categorically that proceeding with such recruitment will be an exercise in bad faith. And so perhaps that explains why a month after taking over, they are seeking to have these persons removed from public service.
Well, that is precisely what I was trying to say, except to add from purely professional HR point of view that if to avoid any mischief as we are known in this country to be sometimes doing, these people are not even 3 months old in the system. So if there is any sort of checks and to ascertain their suitability for the roles they are supposed to be playing, and they are found wanting, what it means is that they cannot qualify to the probationary period to be recruited into the system. So they may not even complete probation, so there will be nothing like politicking, partisan, or whatever connotation they may want to give to it. But I think that there's a process they could easily get the HRs to do, but if they're given that strength from the chief of staff point of view, it's also a very strong position. But I think that these are things that maybe could be done without much fanfare.
Right, Mr. Game, we'll leave the conversation here. I'm sure we'll pick it up on another platform shortly, but I appreciate that you could provide these immediate thoughts to us.
Thank you. Most grateful.
Right, that's Austin Game, is a labor expert and analyst and one who's been doing this for quite a while. Alfred, let's try and wrap up this conversation quickly. Different perspectives will come, whether or not this possibly could open up the government to some legal suits from some of these individuals, and all of that. Mr. Game says there's a way out in terms of the probation period being used as a means to have these persons removed from office. I don't know what you make of that.
I think that's a way to go as well. But then again, you also look at the politics of it as well. This decision, you cannot discount the fact that it is also supposed to satisfy the base of the party in government, because already there was that call that, there had been some last-minute recruitments, and so the government had to look into it. That's why on the 23rd of January, this last month, Julius Debra, who signed this same statement, had tasked the heads of the various government institutions to provide the details of the names that were added to the payroll of those institutions between December 8th and February 23. In fact, that's January 23. So that they have a full and clear idea of the total number of persons who were employed within that period and were added to the payroll, so that then they would know exactly who they are dealing with. So based on that earlier directive, I would want to assume that the chief of staff, through that directive, also got the various heads of the institutions to provide them with the detail of the total number of persons who were employed by the previous administration in that last-minute period. Then, based on their own assessment, they've come out with this directive that we are seeing today, that those employments and recruitments have been rendered null and void.
Indeed, and we're just speaking word that if one such institution, the Bank of Ghana, reports suggest that as many as 200 plus individuals were added after the December 7 elections of 2024. But that's it for us here right now. But there's a bit more details if you go on to our various social media handles, TV3, 3news.com. Julius Debra has directed all heads of state institutions to begin taking processes to annul all recruitment that have been undertaken by the previous administration after the December 7 general elections. I mention again, there's a bit more if you log on to 3 News.
Ebusuya Nyankopon hye obi bia se wanyamre no abenye video ni bia hwe credit to TV3 Ghana said they kind and the reportage regarding to the sacking of Bosompem Osafo Marfo and some other people SSNIT no me pacho ono nso yenya free GH1 eno nso na muhu ye no credit to omo nso Nyankopon hye yi nyina na onye ekese medase bebre stay tuned for more updates yedin komo ni besi amedase